Well, hey guys, we've got a long weekend ahead of us and it's a perfect time to get out in the garden, even with all of this heat. Now, if you've got some planting projects that you're going to want to tackle, here are some tips. I've said over and over again that in the South, and especially in Oklahoma, the best planting time for shrubs or trees or even flowering perennials is really in the spring and fall. But don't let that dissuade you from getting your hands dirty, because right now is a good time to plant some seeds, and some specific ones that really like the heat, that will germinate very quickly and grow like gangbusters. So here are some options for you. And I really encourage you to get your kiddos engaged in this, to learn about gardening and to see the thrill of a seed germinate. So here are some of my favorites to plant this time of year. Zinnias. Zinnias and sunflowers are great hot weather plants. They bloom beautifully, and even though the delayed bloom won't be until, maybe late summer or early fall, you'll have something to look forward to. They'll germinate really, really quickly in this heat. They will grow rapidly, and I think it's kind of fun to have something to look forward to a little bit later in the season. Likewise, marigolds. Marigolds also will germinate really quickly. They love the heat. They're a bright, sunny flower, and they'll give you a great color boost for later in the season. You might also want to try some cosmos. This is a flower that not a lot of people are as familiar with, but it's definitely very fun. It's frilly, and again, another option for the kiddos. Now, you might think that it's way too late to plant tomatoes, but it's actually not. And I have started them this late in the season from seed. Now, granted, you won't get your production until later in the summer and early fall, but I don't mind that at all. And the added bonus is right now you might be able to find lots of seeds on sale. Again, they will germinate pretty quickly and they'll grow very rapidly, and it's fun to watch them grow, and it gives you something to look forward to during the dog days of summer. Now, here are some tips. You want to make sure that after you plant them that you really keep them moist and hydrated. Otherwise, they won't germinate so quickly or so effectively. And once they do germinate and you see those tiny little green sprouts, you want to make sure that you keep them well watered. That might mean multiple times a day, but it's kind of fun to check on their progress, and it's always such a thrill to see when they actually do germinate. Finally, it just wouldn't be summer for me if I didn't plant loads and loads of basil to make pesto. So in this herb trough, and herbs right now are a great thing to plant because they're heat lovers and they will thrive, whether you plant them now from starts or from seed. So I'd already planted some purple ruffle basil, some thyme, I've got some sage in there, but then I left some gaps so that I could plant more basil, and I planted lots of seeds, and you can see that they have germinated. Believe it or not, you guys, these germinated in 2.5 days, very, very quickly, and they're very healthy little sprouts. Now, I planted too densely in this area, and I'll separate them later and spread them around the garden, but they are going to go rapidly, very fun, and it will just really give my garden a shot of fragrance. So you might want to try that. They are heat lovers. They're quintessentially summer. They're easy, and you can go out and you can do it this weekend, and it will give you something to look forward to once the temperatures get even higher. You guys have a great weekend. Well, you guys, here is an update on those seeds that I talked about planting in midsummer and what they look like now, because truly it is something that you can do to kind of puff up your late summer garden. So right here are a couple of the tomatoes that I planted. Now, some of these, the larger ones, were there before, but there's a couple of smaller ones that came up from those seeds, and they are getting ready. They've got little flowers on them, and they are getting ready to set blooms and hopefully some little tomatoes. And then I believe I also talked about some marigolds, planting marigolds later in the season. And I put some in the front of this border, not a lot. This one here obviously got more sun, or it may have been a transplant, I can't remember. But over here, you can see I planted a couple of that distinctive marigold foliage, a couple of marigolds, very late, and those will bloom later in the summer. And then these wonderful zinnias. And what I like about planting zinnias a little bit later is that if these had been planted earlier, they would probably look very buggy, very tattered, and have powdery mildew. But because these were planted later, they have managed to retain their freshness, and they are blooming in the foreground of the border. And as I've said many times, look really beautiful with this lime sizzler fire bush. And then they were a little bit late to the party, but I also planted some of those same holy scarlet zinnias over here. And you can see that those are blooming too. Now I mentioned planting cosmos, and I did not plant any of those. And I did not plant, I don't know if I mentioned sunflowers or not, but those would have also been candidates that I could have planted. So I know it sometimes is discouraging, and excuse the sound of the chainsaw behind me, but I know sometimes it's frustrating when I talk about doing something in the future and then you don't have an opportunity to see it come to fruition. So this week, I'm going to do lots of updates. We're going to go back in time and see what things looked like, say back in March or earlier in the season, or maybe even in a different year, and then how they evolved and what they look like now. So there will be some kind of before and afters. You can compare from when they were ugly and wintry to now when they are in their full glory. And right in there, you can see I have some like colored hibiscus planted that have been so slow to bloom this year. I'm not really sure why, but when they come into bloom, this really will be a cacophony of that kind of orange-red color. So stay tuned for these little garden updates going back in time and then into the present today. Have a great week, everyone. Stay safe, stay well.